Alright guys, what is up? We are doing the first float of 2023. I think I haven't been in the kayak since December, November on a real river situation. So I'm excited to get out, and as I'm sure you've seen, we are in a new kayak. We are in the Crescent Shoalie. I haven't really done anything to it other than mount a little plate for a motor and a power pole, and I'm only using the power pole today. Other than that, zero modifications. I'm just running it simple, del estilo sencillo. It is mid-March. We are in the first days of spring, which I don't know if you can really count it as the first days of spring. Still feels like winter, but we are gonna hit 50 something a day. We're gonna have some light rain. We're gonna see if we can find some river smallies here on some current seams, hopefully. Munching, aggressive bites. Anyway, in addition to the fishing, what I'm gonna do is just give you my thoughts here on the Shoalie. This is my very first outing with it. I grabbed it used on Facebook Marketplace. It was used like one time, got a great deal, couldn't pass it up. I was planning on buying one anyway for this coming season. Just ended up happening a little sooner than I thought it would, but that's all right. So I'm gonna let you guys know what I think about this. Right now, already off the bat, I'm really liking the width. I'm really liking how high the seat can sit up. It's got 2 seat configurations. I can show you that later. But for now, we do need to get started making our way downstream. So far, I'm liking how the Shoalie handles. Definitely very easy to maneuver, easy to turn. That does take away from its ability to track straight, and I'm noticing that with this wind coming out of the south here into my face, it has a tendency to kind of shift me around a little bit when I don't want to, but that's just kind of the way it is. If you want to be able to go through rapids and turn your kayak very quickly, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of straight tracking for that maneuverability. So I'm okay with that because this is going to be a kayak used in specific situations, not an everyday kayak. And at some point, I will have a motor on it with a rotor foil that'll allow me to steer with my feet. So that'll be fun. But it's also just a good, simple river kayak right now. Plenty of space here in the hole. I love that. I don't feel cramped at all. My compass is just narrower, even though it's about the same width overall. The inside of it, the usable space, is narrower. So I definitely like the Shoalie in that regard. I feel like I have a ton of space. It was stable standing up. I'm really liking it so far. So, all right, y'all. So this is my first time out with the Shoalie, and I have some thoughts on it so far. I've done a couple miles on the river, and there are a few things I want to talk about, things that I like about it, a few things that I don't like. We'll get into more as I do a little bit more paddling and fishing out of it. But for now, a couple things I want to talk about. The maneuverability of this kayak is awesome. You can make turns with one hand. You can make turns in awkward positions. You can easily turn when you got full control of both hands. In current, turn around, do quick spins. Now that said, if you want a kayak that feels like super stable and feels like it doesn't give at all, like this way or this way, this probably isn't the kayak for you, because when you do turn and you lean into it, the kayak gives. Like, it's not a tippy feeling if you're familiar with kayaking, but I can see how someone might misconstrue that feeling for like, oh crap, I'm gonna tip and panic, and that could lead to worse things than would actually happen in a normal scenario. So when you turn, it allows you to lean into that turn and really dig. And that said, when you shift your weight and you're just sitting down in the kayak, it also has a tendency to do that, or if you find yourself a little off balance, it'll give a little bit. And so you do have to be on your toes in that sense, but even standing up in this kayak, I feel pretty good. You can definitely give it a little bit of shimmy on each side, but it doesn't feel tippy. It doesn't feel like it's gonna go. This is a super wide, stable platform. It's not cluttered. You're not gonna trip over anything. So I really like it from a maneuverability standpoint. Another small thing that I really like is all of the straps that are on this kayak are made of high quality fabric, it seems. Whether that's the paddle strap, whether that's the handle straps, or the rear strap to secure whatever you have back here. Everything seems high quality. It doesn't seem like it's gonna fray. It doesn't seem like it's gonna pop when you tighten it down. So I think a lot of the smaller details in this kayak actually seem to be made of quality parts, which is something within this price range you may not get with other brands. This is probably a little more expensive than another paddle kayak that I would get that doesn't have a pedal drive option or anything else. But because it has so many features and small details like the straps, that's why I decided to get it. I did get this used, and it was used like one time, and I got a couple $100 off, so it was a great deal. But as I do more and more paddling with it, I'm just finding little things that I really do enjoy about it that I think makes it worth the money. And from a rigging standpoint, there's another thing that I really like. In the back of the kayak, there is a rear hatch, and that's not something you get in every other kayak. I've had to drill holes in my other 2 kayaks to get me rear access so I can run cabling, so that I can install power pole mounts or motor mounts or whatever it may be. So that said, with the Shoalie, you actually have a platform built for a power pole or a motor mount. It's that 4-bolt pattern. You can see them, there's circles in the rear of the kayak. You drill down through those. Now I will say there is one small thing I'm not a big fan of. When they planned that, I think they did probably give you enough room to maybe stick a wrench up in there on a couple of the bolts you're driving down through it. But I found especially if you don't have longer bolts, but I found that I could not manage to get to the rear ones to actually tighten the lock nut as I drove it down in there. And that might be user error in some way, but I feel like that area back there is just way too tight. They should have given a little more space in that so that you could get a wrench or a Crescent wrench or a socket up there, because I think as it stands, there'll be a lot of people who aren't able to get up there to tighten. Now, I did make it work. I was able to get lock nuts and nuts on all of them, but some of them just aren't that tight. So one thing I do recommend if you are going to drill into the back of this kayak is when you're making your pilot holes, you need to make them small. And then when you put a bolt down in there, like let's say a hex head bolt for a power pole mount, let that bolt do the work and actually work through the plastic, and you may have to push a little bit, but that way it's actually working itself into the kayak, and so it's pretty secure. It's not just going to slide up and down. Another thing that I'm sure you've seen if you have looked at the Shoalie at all is these 2 little rails right here. They're perfect for the Yak Attack paddle holder. I forget what they are called, but you slide them in right there. You can push your paddle right in. Now that's not the most functional position for a paddle in my opinion, but it's a good thing for when you're out of the kayak or even doing something and your legs are over it where it doesn't require use. It's okay. Now up at the front of the kayak, there's also a little I don't know, a paddle slide. I don't know exactly what to call this, but when you put the paddle up there, I wish that you could turn the roto grip here, that's what it's called, so that it sat in there, but because of the height of the handle, it's just not gonna allow it to work. Now maybe if I mess around with it a little bit, it just seems like this actually needs to be up a little higher. It'd be nice to have a holder there for it to sit in while it's under the paddle strap, but it's still secure even if you kind of put it right here, as long as you're not moving too much. Pretty good. But one small thing that I'm not a huge fan of, and you can always take those roto grips off, which I plan on doing, and maybe throwing like a fish finder on one side to have it a little bit closer instead of the rail that is a little further up. Now this kayak does have an area for a fish finder up at the front of the hull, just before the front hatch, and to me that's just too far. Like, I'm not going to be squinting at my screen, especially when we get a little bit of sun. That's going to be problematic for me. So I'm going to be, using a rail to mount my fish finder when and if I do use it, and it's going to be a little closer to me. I don't want it so far up at the front. So yeah, anyway, there are lots of great features, and another one is just the front hatch. The front hatch is actually its own enclosed space. It's not at all connected to the inside of the hull. So let's say you get a little bit of water in your hull for whatever reason, it actually has no way to get into that front hatch. So that storage is completely disconnected. It's got bungee straps to keep it down. I drove it through the rain last night to get down here. No water got in, so I'm very happy with that. It's a big space. I can stick a battery box in there. I think I've got a pair of shoes in there. I've got snacks. I've got my key. So all of those things fit in there nicely. I really like the space, especially that I can get a battery box in there. That's huge. That's one reason why I really wanted to get this kayak over, like, let's say the Bonafide River kayak, because it had no front hatch. I'd be strapping things down. I always feel safer with batteries and electronics if I have an enclosed space either inside the hull or totally separated like the Crescent here. All right, I am going to get back to paddling here, but there is one thing I wanted to point out, and that is just it seems like the massive amount of real estate that you have in this kayak. Like, I just feel like my feet Could go anywhere. I have so much space. I'm not cramped. I can throw things down. I have a net there. No biggie. I can have pliers out here, no biggie, and I wouldn't feel like my space is cramped at all. It's one thing about the Hobie Compass that I'm not a fan of is, despite its width, its overall width is comparable to this kayak. The usable space within it is not that great, and I always feel like my legs are tucked together, and even when I have rods in the front, it feels like it's just a disaster waiting to happen. You know, I've lost fish because of that. Partly due to my own stupidity, of course, but with this I've had 3 rods up at the front, and I just don't feel like it's actually in my way. I still feel like I have plenty of space. I really like the width of this kayak and also how it handles, you know, in terms of, you know, standing up and everything with that width. Overall, lots of positive things to say so far, but I'm gonna paddle a little bit more and see if I can come across a couple other things I want to talk about for you guys. Alright, I have continued to think about what I like about this kayak, and I do like the height of the seat. I like the 2 positions that it gives the option for. I almost always prefer a higher seat, just provides better visibility. I know you sacrifice a little bit of stability when you do that, but I'm willing to sacrifice that. I'm not too unstable in a kayak, and this thing has shown that it's stable enough that even if you give it some leans, that you don't have to worry about it too much. So this higher seat position is great, but really the thing I like most about it is the under-seat storage space that it allows. When you got it up in the high position, like right now I've got a battery box under there, I've got a dry bag, I got my water bottle, like there's plenty of space down there that can be used for tackle, can be used for just random gear like I have. So I do really like that option. Probably have to keep my motor battery under there when I do run a motor and run my cabling up, but for the most part, I think it's perfect height. I think it's perfect amount of space. Even utilizing that under-seat storage, you still have room for a rod on either side, unless you have a dry bag over here like I do, but no big deal to lose that. In terms of comfort, I think the seat does a pretty good job. It definitely has lumbar support. I'm just trying to find the right setup to where it doesn't fry my lower back when I'm paddling. Despite the lumbar support, I do still feel some burning in the lower back area and some tightness, which I'm not a fan of. And really that happens to me in most kayaks. I do have a cushion that I use for that reason, and the Compass especially, because it fries my back when I pedal, but also in the Old Town, which is not as bad. So maybe if I try that in this one, it'll be satisfactory. But overall, it's pretty comfortable. But like I said, the high vantage point is really nice. I do enjoy that a bit. Well, y'all, we're getting close to the end of the float. I don't have a whole lot more to say about the Shoalie right now. I'm sure I will in the future as I do some modifications to it and continue to use it for paddling, for fishing. Today the fishing sucks. It's just clarity wasn't what I wanted it to be. Still cold. It's late winter. But it's a beautiful river, so even if the fishing sucks, being out here is always great. It's been very relaxing. But this is a solid river kayak as far as I can tell right now. I look forward to the future when I can continue to use it on some different rivers, different kinds of water for different purposes. So check back then. I'm sure there'll be videos starring the Shoalie. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, y'all. See you next time.